Oh, okay, we're live. Sorry. Sometimes that little button or that little live little whatever button up there at the top doesn't always pop up when I expect it to. Okay, so anyway, good morning. Welcome everybody to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker-Carl, broadcasting to you live from beautiful Southwest Georgia. And I'm here with my good friends Dan, Donna, Jason, Catherine, Sandy, and is that everybody? Goodness, I guess it is. Normally Danielle's with us, but she's having some PC problems. Why am I getting an echo? Hold on. Whatever button up there, top doesn't always pop up when I expect it to. Sorry guys, I had the YouTube page open in the background there, and I forgot to mute it. Okay, so anyway, today we're going to be talking about the missing ingredients for successfully becoming successful, and we're actually on chapter 3 of the book, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter. But before we get going, I want to have everybody just give everybody a chance to introduce themselves and say where you're hanging out from. And for those of you who are watching, maybe you found the link just kind of randomly on Google Plus or somewhere on the internet. If you want to be able to participate in the conversation, please go to SaturdayMorningMastermind.com. That is our main live event page where you add comments to the page and whatnot. And also, I'll post a link to YouTube video on there just in case you're viewing from a mobile device and having difficulties with that. So while I'm doing that, go ahead and everybody take a chance or take an opportunity to introduce yourself.
I'll go. Good morning, Sandy Root here in sunny Miami Beach, and happy to be back. It's been a long time since I've been here. It feels like good to see you all and looking forward to sharing this book. It's my first week sharing this book, so yay!
Hello, I'm Catherine Clement here in Boulder, Colorado, and yes, it does feel like you've been gone forever, Sandy, so I'm so glad you're back. And just loving this book and looking forward to discussing it, so thank you for coming this morning.
Hey, Jason Roberts here from St. Petersburg, Florida. Great to be here. Wonderful to see everybody on today, and really look forward to the discussion.
Good morning, everyone. Let me say real quick. My dog is being fussy this morning, so I'm gonna go right back on mute. But good morning, everyone. Donna Allen, Raleigh, North Carolina. Look forward to the discussion.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dan Smith from Boise, Idaho. It's going to be an exciting time.
Okay, that was everybody, right? Okay, sorry, I get distracted in the background sometimes, and I don't always hear if everybody has introduced themselves. What did my page just do? Okay, Google Plus has been doing some interesting and different things just recently. I don't know if anybody has noticed that, but I've been noticing it. Okay, well, anyway, welcome, Sandy Johnson. I see you commenting on the page. For anybody else who's hanging out with us, leave us a comment on the event page. Just let us know where you are in the world, and if this is your first time visiting with us, or if not, let us know that too. What we'd like to go ahead and do, though, is just have you participate in the conversation. We enjoy having you add to the conversation. Of course, we all learn more when all of us participate, and so just add your thoughts. Morning, Julia. Welcome, welcome. And okay, so let's start the conversation here. You know, of course, at the end of this chapter, it gives us 3 ingredients that are kind of the missing ingredients for creating success in your life. But I want to know what everybody's definition of success is to you. I mean, what does success mean to you? Share your thoughts on the page, or who wants to jump out first?
I'll go. I think, you know, I made a video about this recently, how success means something different for everybody, and it can always change too, what the success means as an individual on your own path. But I think for me, over the past couple of years, it's really been my own personal development, you know, just getting better than myself every day, and really sticking to my rituals that I do every day to better myself, and reading books like this every day and listening to audios that uplift me. So for me, that's really success to me, because then I'm able to share that outwards and help other people as well. And I think that's my definition of success, is really being able to help others as well. And we can only do that when we're continually building ourselves up. So that's my success at the moment. What success is to me.
You know, Smith, I saw that question you posted. You know, if your idea of success, you reach it and you do so, but you're not really happy, are you really actually successful? I mean, that's a pretty deep question. For me, no, I think that you know, success for me has always been doing what is going to make me happy. And I do see people referring to like having a successful career as you know, having having a respectful career, you know, and that's sort of like you're basing it on someone else's judgment of whether or not they think what you're doing is respectful or not, you know. And for me, it's just whether, you know, it's got to make me happy. You know, I changed my career going into college. I was originally going into physical therapy, and then for a number of reasons, I ended up changing that. And but it was going to be something that I really enjoyed doing, and when it became something where the red tape of the insurance companies were going to be keeping me from actually providing the best quality of care, I started to relook at what it is I'd be doing for the rest of my life, and I actually changed my major. So for me, that's you know, what I go by. But I'd be interested to hear what everybody else has to say.
I agree with Sandy. I think it definitely changes. For me, it changes almost daily. Sometimes success is getting a chore done or something. You know, I mean, I've learned how to celebrate the smaller stuff. I can tell you that. You know, obviously, I had a successful career as a registered nurse for 20 years, and that's one of those respectable careers, I guess you could say. That's interesting point you brought up there, Jason. I never, you know, of course I've had a concept of what's a respectable career, but I never thought about how much that definition could change depending on the person. You know, what's respectable to one person isn't respectable at all to someone else. So so that's a good point to bring up. You can't base your success on somebody else's idea of what success is. You know, you have to figure that out for yourself. What does it mean? For me, even though finances have changed a lot, and my direction had to change a lot after my accident, you know, I feel more successful now than I did then, even though in a lot of people's eyes, you know, I don't make as much money as I did then, and I'm not, you know, helping people one-on-one as much. But, you know, I was working a lot, probably 16 hours a day, you know, one-on-one with, or, you know, physically with people. So I don't do that anymore. But I still help people every day online. And even, I mean, to me, I don't know, I guess I was a clown at one point. So me just putting a smile on somebody's face, that's a success for me. You know, if I make a post or I say something stupid and make somebody smile, that's success to me. So you have to figure that out for yourself. But I agree with you, Sandy. You know, I have these, they're not rituals, but I do have things that I have promised myself to do for myself to better my health and my mindset and all these things. And so when I pull those off every day, that's a good bonus success too. So stick to your stuff.
Yeah, I'll jump out. You know, Earl Nightingale had a saying that I'm pretty sure he was the one that came up with it originally. Anyway, it was success is the progressive realization of a worthwhile dream or goal. And so the question comes up: is success a destination? Is it someplace where you can arrive at, or is it a process that you go through? And the thought that you're either green and growing or else you're dying. You're either making progress forward or else you're going backwards. It's like the idea of free-flowing water. When when water's flowing free, it's clean and or has a tendency to purify itself. But when it runs into a pond, then it gets scummy and it begins to smell bad and breeds mosquitoes and that type of thing. And so it's the same thing with our lives, as that success is a progressive realization of a worthwhile dream or goal. As long as you're moving forward in life, in a sense, you are successful because you're always moving towards your goals. You're always moving towards your dreams. But when a person thinks that they've arrived, that's when maybe they begin to stink a little bit, for lack of a better, kind of like the scummy water, that they're no longer growing. They're no longer green and growing and moving forward. Now they maybe get self-centered, and that type of thing. So, the question is success money? And it's not necessarily money. It's like if you're an Olympic athlete and your goal is to have a gold medal, and you win that gold medal, then the success was, being the first or the number one person in the entire world in your sport. But money will flow from that, because of all the endorsements and commercials and that type of thing that you'll get. So, the thought that the question is, in my mind, is success a process or is it a destination? And if it's a process, then you're always in the process of growing, and even when things maybe go wrong in your life and that sort of thing, but can you bounce back? Can you come back? And can you be better tomorrow or today than what you was yesterday? And always moving forward, always moving toward the dream or the goal, the worthwhile dream or goal, rather than thinking that you've arrived and that you are the center of your own universe at that point. So that's it.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Again, success for me is simply in the now. I'm constantly learning, and it's helping me, and I learn from different people and coming alongside of other people. I find that to be the most successful thing in life, is to realize that forever learning, and it's fresh. The now is fresh, and to me, that's just most successful to me. All the accomplishments, but to now is success.
Awesome. Welcome, Christine. I saw you just jumped on. If you would like to share your definition of success, I think everybody's had an opportunity to do that. You want to jump in?
Okay. Good morning. Can you hear me? Good deal. My definition of success is taking the steps to stretch yourself and grow a little bit each day. Taking steps towards stepping into who you fully are and realizing your full potential every day.
Awesome. I was going to mention kind of a little bit on that part of it is, in my opinion, my definition of success is absolutely, fulfilling my full potential. And of course, part of that, I think, is defining what does that mean to you. And I think that, like everybody has said, a little bit, it can change from day to day. It can evolve into new and different and more amazing things. And I'm losing my papers here. And so I think that that's a powerful thing right there, is just to fulfill your full purpose, I guess you could say. So let's kind of talk a little bit about how some of the things this book talks about in here. It's one of my questions for you is why do you think so few people are able to make lasting changes after reading self-help? In this book it talks about how, let's see where it says this on page 28, it's talking about even the best-selling success solutions were able to create lasting changes in only a handful of tens of thousands of people who have tried them. They would work for a time, and then the average individual would revert to his old ways. And then it also says it is not impossible to live a full and rewarding life day in and day out, but it's just highly unusual. I think that's kind of a big deal right there when we think about that. Why is it so unusual for people to, live a satisfying life and be successful day in and day out? What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I'll jump out. I think that part of the reason is the depth of the person's why, because it takes work. Napoleon Hill writes about it, and he says that it takes eternal vigilance. So you have to work at it day in and day out, because we all have a default, and that default is our self-image, and that self-image was developed as a child. And so unless you have a super deep why of what you're doing, the goal, the dream that you have, the destination that you're moving towards, constantly moving towards this destination, unless you have a really super deep why that you're moving towards that destination, then I don't think that the average person, because the reason why I say average person is because if you measured success in dollars, there's only 2% of people who ever become what you'd call truly financially independent. And everybody else, the 98%, are stuck in the lower income brackets, and when they reach retirement years, they don't have enough money to take care of themselves. And so 98% of the population of the world, I mean, in my humble opinion, but based on books that I've read over the years, has a default that tends towards negative. And so when you read a book and you get some new ideas and you go, oh yeah, this is the greatest thing ever, I'm going to do this, but your default or your self-image dictates that you fall back into certain a channel, if you will, that is comfortable, and anytime you go outside your comfort zone, you're uncomfortable, and it's really easy to want to run back to that default, which is negative, which is this channel that we're all kind of used to riding in. And it's work. It takes work to work on yourself on a daily basis. To read your affirmations, to take the time to visualize yourself living the life that you want to live and doing all the things that you want to do. All that takes work. And the fact is a lot of times just living life gets in the way, and taking care of kids, taking care of animals, taking care of business, all things that you do, and then try to watch a few hours of TV or whatever every night, and all the things that we do gets in the way of moving forward and constantly moving towards the success that we want. So self-image, a default self-image that we all want to go climb back into that comfort zone and kind of nestle in, and nobody ruffle our feathers and rocking our boat, so to speak. So I'll turn it over to somebody else.
I would probably piggyback off of Dan a little bit, and I would take probably a slightly different thought process, but certainly in the same direction, in that I think that it's mostly because we've had all of these years of worth decay, so we don't have the dreamer turned on anymore, right? And you're stuck in the rut of all that worth decay and all that crap, that negativity that's been built between your ears for all the years, that literally you no longer know how to dream. And even if you do dream a little bit, the courage to actually take the step towards that dream is somewhat diminished. And so that worth decay really feeds into it. And I think that the reason that people don't realize more success is, quite honestly, they haven't dared to create a vision around their why, because the why always ends up falling short. But when you attach a vision, which is, you have that emotion, you can smell what it's like when you have reached your success. You can see what it's like, you feel what it's like when that vision is so deep that absolutely, when you don't take a step towards it, it just crushes you, and like it motivates you to get up and do more and take action. Like, I think that's the key component that's missing for most people.
I agree with a lot of what you were saying, Dan, about that default mode. It's easy to go back into that, like you said, when, we're busy with life and we just fall back into our old habits that we, grew up with, that are ingrained in us. And, I think a lot of people give up. A lot of times we'll read a book and we're like, yeah, I'm going to do this. This is great. My life's going to change like this. And then if we don't see the results right away, then we start to fall off. And I think that's a big part of it too, is people maybe give it a few days or a week and then, oh, that's not working. And then maybe they go to the next book and get excited about that. And, I think there's a lot of people who sort of book hop and they find the next thing that's going to help them. And then the next thing, and they try that for a little bit. But I found, for me, I'll take like little blips out of each book, and I have like maybe 5 to 6 pages of different exercises that I can do every day. So I do what I feel for that day resonates with me in the moment, but really it does take practice, and it really takes that discipline and to really see the changes and to stick with it and to eventually get out of the old habit of going into default mode. I was just reading a book called Excuse Me, Your Life is Waiting by Lynn Grabhorn. It's sort of based on the law of attraction, and you attract what you're feeling, and more it talks about more how you're attracting your feelings than what you're thinking necessarily. I found days where I would just get in the whirlwind of life and totally forget and be back in like this negative thoughts and stuff like that. But the more I would, just have like notes in my house or have the book laying out to remind me, just little reminders around to say, oh, wait, I'm supposed to be, changing my feelings, having those little reminders help a lot. Like put Post-it notes around to remind you, because a lot of times we forget, because like you said, then we go in that default mode, and all of a sudden, like days later, like, oh my God, I forgot to do this exercise. So I find that Post-it notes and even emailing myself little reminders sometimes, just if I do get sucked into life, to remind myself, oh yeah, you need to do this exercise. So really, it does take that discipline. Sort of think of yourself as like someone, I guess, like your own child, like you want to take care of, and you want to give them reminders, and you want to help them grow, and what would you do for that other person to help them, and do that for yourself. Sometimes it's easier to think of someone else than ourselves, so I sort of see myself as that little child that I want to help, and how would I help her? Oh, well, let me put a Post-it note over here or something like that. So those things help me remember.
I love that idea, Sandy, of kind of thinking of yourself as the little child that you want to nurture and help to become, the greatest that they can be. That's such a powerful concept, particularly when you're talking about putting the reminders around. And I think that visualizing side of it, or even if it's not so much visualizing as just the reason why you're doing it, like what Christine was saying, is that whole, and what Dan they were both talking about, the why side of it, and I think that can be a very powerful technique to instill that feeling of why you're doing this. So I love that, love it. Sandy has a comment on the page. She was sharing with us her her definition of success. She says, for me, success is bettering my health and my mindset and my kids' health and their mindset and living in the land of the positive. I love how I'm still growing as a person and how I just love life. That's so awesome, Sandy. Wonderful. Julia says, I agree with Dan. Having the right mindset is a very important element to having the success that they want. Awesome, awesome. Who else wants to jump out?
I was just going to say something in response to what Sandy was saying. Of course, I just forgot it in the moment, but it was really good because I was like, yeah, Sandy, so good. So I'll just pass for that.
I'd like to say I totally agree with you guys, and it's these are all concepts that I think we've all been introduced to over the time of going through these self-development books, and we really kind of have to bring them all together to reinforce each other. But yeah, the vision is huge, Christina. I mean, if I have a hard time of getting clear on my vision and actually seeing myself where I'm going to be, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. And I've really over my journey of success has been I've had a difficult time of I kind of consider it like mental whiplash when you've got a great idea that's inspired you and makes you want to move forward, and then you get distracted or get back into that default programming, and then something you start hearing this other negative self-talk that pulls you back the other way, and you really kind of have to I mean it's a little struggle for a little while, but that persistence you're talking about, Sandy, being persistent and treating ourselves as someone we're going to help, and we're going to cooperate with ourselves, and that we're not going to give up until it sticks. For me, I've had to like if I hear a recording or maybe something in a book that is really poignant, and I have to read it out loud, record it, and then like listen to it later, because sometimes I don't feel like reading this type of material, and sometimes I don't even feel like listening to it. It's like my subconscious is like, haven't you had enough of that? Aren't we done with that already? Can't we get back to what we've been told all our life is the way we're supposed to do things, and it's like I have to like force it onto my subconscious again, say, no, this is important. This is what really is the way to be thinking now, and and it's that repetition, and it's that persistence of doing that, even in the times that I don't want it. I think that the times that I'm really pushing it away are the times that I probably need it the most. So I do whatever I can to just subject myself to it all the time, and boy, it has really made a difference. I didn't have I mentioned in a comment before that I didn't have much success with self-help books until my why became big enough, and I started becoming consistent in looking for the answer, and persistent in putting it into my mind, and things started to stick, and I started to remember things, because I used to have that situation where I'd leave myself notes, and I'd wake up the next day and go, "Ooh, who wrote me a note and left this for me today?" And oh, okay, I remember what I was doing at that point in time. But boy, I tell you, when we have all this default programming, as you say, as Dan mentioned, it's hard to overcome that, but we can. I liken it to how when I was younger, I was always told to shut off the lights when I left the room, and it was like I was always forgetting to shut off the light until finally I put it on autopilot. I was like every time I leave a room, I better shut the light off, And I started when I was over at my friend's house. I'd be leaving the room and shutting off the light on them, and they'd be like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm sorry. It's just something that it's something I do now." And I think correct me if I'm wrong, and you guys probably have some other opinions about this, but for me, I think I've tended to put a lot of things like that in my life on autopilot, and they just become knee-jerk reactions to things. And gosh, just from starting to read this book a little bit, I'm hearing those very quiet but significant thoughts that need to be corrected. I'm wondering if you all have had some of those same instances.
Well, I think you have a little bit of a point there with it when it comes to the autopilot part, and it's the how do you get to the autopilot part, you know? It's because literally something that I've learned by reading another book called Pay Me What I'm Worth, it's the inability for us to get conscious in the moment, and we take that for granted because of the hustle and the bustle of our culture anymore. So the inability to be conscious in the moment, you're so cluttered. You've got so many things that your mind is focusing on rather than just that one thing. And so we're looking to self-help book and self-help book and self-help book and self-help program and blah, 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 when literally most of the time those are anecdotal. Those are theory, strategy, whatever, but they don't give you the how-to steps to go along with it. They don't give you the implementation actions to help make that transition permanent. So when you're reading those pages, in that moment, yeah, 5 minutes later, oh my gosh, all about it. But it's when you step out into the world and you get knocked on the chin that you lose that, because it's not automatic. And the reason that it's not automatic is because you're looking external rather than looking to what's in you already. See, when you are when you're conscious and open and clear, and you don't have all of that negative self-talk going on, because you completely understand what your value is, you completely understand what you provide in every situation, then even when you make a mistake, or even when you're so, not really sure that you made the right choice, you're very still confident in yourself that if you've got a pivot, you can get your pivot on and it's not a problem. And that's when it becomes automatic. When it's truly in the moment, you're clear of all that crap, and you can just take action knowing that in any given moment, if you got a pivot, it's okay, and you'll make the right decision for that moment.
Yeah, I agree. I just want to say, yeah, I agree totally with that. And yeah, it's the repetition and attaching it with some emotion and some thought, being conscious about it. That's excellent, Christine. I agree.
Wow, Christine, I was hoping you would ask that, possibly could ask that question too, or type it. You remember that day when we were talking, Christina? You just said the key word pivot. Pivot. You just said it. She asked me a question, and I don't know if any of you saw our talk, and I hope I get to talk with each one of you personally. But understand what I was trying to say, and we piggyback here off on different ones here. This is how we learn and we share, and we're talking about the questions and all that. But Christina asked me a question, and believe it or not, the answer was there, but she jolted my thought process. And Christina, you remember that day, and you asked, and I said, come back with that question again, because that we're so cluttered in our mind to where it's like the doctors when we're working in the hospital. Some of you know what I'm talking about there. They have to come in there. They have to sometimes they have to shock you back into reality. Well, sometimes that's the way someone may have to come along, and life may have to do to you as an individual. You may have to get shocked sometimes, to say, hey, change that program, like the old DVD, or like the record, the record used to say it would stick and it would just go around and around. I think you know what I'm saying. It was like a broken record. I think that's what we used to describe it as, a broken record. Like, hey, that just was so annoying, that broken record, and you would just go there and snatch it out, and you would say, oh, give me something new, give me something fresh. Well, that's what Christina done for me that day, and although it was there in my brain, it was like she asked me a question, and I hope that she can remember that question, because there's no way I can ask that question the way she did it, but it helped me that day, and I would hope that she remembers what I'm talking about. Let me go ahead and get off of here now.
Yeah, that was a great example, Donna. It's that shock. That was great imagery. Like, I saw that in my mind's eye on that. And I was literally just asking if you feel like you're paid what you're if you're not that you're paid what you're worth so much, but if you feel like you are totally receiving what you're giving back, and it's one of those things. It's one of those things where you think about the person that you most respect. Are you talking about that one, Donna? The person that you most respect, that you wouldn't think of hurting them for any reason, and you wouldn't think that they would dare hurt you intentionally for any reason. And when you come up with that person in your mind, the question is that person you, or is it someone else?
What you were saying, Donna, it just made me think, as part of all of this, when we're trying to change our default programming and better ourselves, and, that having a support group, having people around us who are going to remind us of things is important too, because sometimes when we're on this path, it can feel lonely sometimes because we're like growing and growing, and then we're maybe surrounded by people who like bring us down, and we're like, wait, how did I get down here? And then wait to go back up again, and so it's important to find those people who are also wanting to grow too. And I think Facebook is a great forum for that. There's a lot of groups out there. There's this group called Abraham Hicks Vortex group that I really love. There's always like positive videos and people sharing, people like dancing and doing their own like groovy thing, and it's so much fun and it uplifts you. And so I think it's important to find those people that can surround us, because that is a huge part of it, because it can feel lonely if we don't have the people surrounding us who are also going to remind us of the things that we need to be reminded of in these moments where we fall down a little bit.
Let me real quick share a comment that Julia has posted on the page. Julia says, I also agree with Jason Roberts. The why is very important. How bad do we want it? In this chapter, I read a section where it states we go back to the old way, just life before, living life as always have, and then wonder why we aren't doing as well as we think we should. I want to have a successful business to leave as a legacy for my children, and I just can't go back to the old way. Of the fear of that happening keeps me moving forward, learning and taking risks that I would not have taken. I don't want the life I had before. That is such a powerful thing right there. Is when you have your why as being somebody, part of providing for your family or helping make your life better than it was before, is that can be super powerful. And we keep talking about that a little bit, about what your why is. I have kind of a thought on that as well. Of course, in here it's talking about how one of the things that the author says in here is he thinks that the most sensible programming is to reprogram your self-image. And of course, Christina's touched on that. I think we've all touched on that to some extent. And I love the way you were saying the what was it, the worth decay. It's like your self-worth, and that's your self-image, right? And so if you can improve your self-image, then of course that is going to help you improve your life. So thanks for sharing that, Julia. BG also says, and welcome, by the way, BG. I don't think that I welcomed you this morning. She says, I agree, Jason. It's those quiet thoughts that come that we have to catch. Absolutely. It's those little things that keep sneaking up on us. and we've got to catch those. And I think that, when we keep delving into different personal developments, and like Jason was saying, being persistent and being consistent, I think a lot of times people are so caught up in wanting the solution right this very minute that they don't give time to overcome all of this previous programming. And so they think, oh, okay, I'm going to read this book and everything's going to be wonderful. And so they get into it, they start applying the things, and then everything goes back to the way that it was. But one thing that I've noticed over the years of studying personal development is that every different personal development book or program or seminar or video or whatever can give you a different insight. It can help you in a different way, help you come to a realization, or shock you, like what Donna was saying, just give you a smack in the face and a light bulb moment, and all of a sudden you have this thing where you put all these different little pieces together, and all of a sudden it just makes sense. So, why do you think, guys, as far as the author is sitting there saying, your self-image is so important, and why that can be the key to making the big changes? What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I'll jump out on that one. Um, I have an old Amway tape that I listen to. It's in my car. I've got a cassette thing in my car, and this one particular tape is by a guy he was a dentist, and but he became a diamond in the Amway business, and he talks about self-image a lot on this tape, and what he's talking about is that people would come to him, and his name was Wayne Martin, and they'd say, "Hey Wayne, I have a dentist. Will you show him the plan for me?" And he goes into his talk about self-image on there, and what he's saying is that people haven't developed their self-image to the point where they could go to somebody who, in their mind, is this huge success because they're a doctor, they're a dentist, and they are only maybe a lowly accountant or you know, whatever, and that's what he talks about is self-image. You know, what they're really saying is my self-image isn't big enough. And I talked about that a little bit last week. I was talking about a guy named Jack who would pull up to a $500,000 house in his old rust bucket car that the fenders are rusting out. It smokes for 5 minutes when you first start it up and leaves a puddle of transmission fluid in the guy's driveway, but have the attitude that you're going to go in there to this guy living in this $500,000 house and say, I got something better than what you have, you know, and it's attitude. And something that in my mind, what we're doing is you know, I ask you the question, what are you good at today? We're all good at something, but there was a point in time when you weren't good at it because you had never done it before, and then you get started with it, and you're scared at first, and you think, well, gosh, you know, what are the steps? I got to do A, and then I got to do B, and I got to do C, and I got to do D, but gosh, what if I do D before I do B? And you know, you're flustered, you're frustrated, you know, because you don't know the process yet. And over time, you learn the process, you calm down, you master it, and now you're good at it. Now you identify yourself as that. That's what I was in the painting business. I was Dan Smith, the painter. You know, in my mind, I was one of the greatest painters that's ever lived in the history of the world. You know, I'm the greatest painter ever. You know, and why? Because I mastered it. I mastered it over time. And so now, when you're trying to learn a new concept, it's still forebrain thinking. It's still point A, point B, point C, and I hope I don't get D before B and screw this whole thing up. Well, it's because it's not natural. It's not normal for you at this point. And if you could look at your life as a circle, a little tiny circle, and what you're doing is you're expanding the circle. Each time that you grow a little bit, the circle gets bigger and it gets bigger, and your comfort zone expands, and it gets bigger and bigger. And what you're doing is you're moving these uncomfortable thoughts, uncomfortable concepts from forebrain thinking, you're moving it to subconscious activity, where, like Jason said, at first it was hard. He got in trouble because he didn't turn the lights out. And then he moved it from conscious forebrain thinking to subconscious activity, and he turned out the lights at his friend's house because he's so used to turning out the lights, it just comes natural. He moved it to the subconscious realm. And that's what we're doing, is learning new concepts, learning new actions, new thought habits, and new patterns of thinking, taking it from conscious forebrain thought where it's hard and difficult to subconscious activity where it just comes normal and natural to us. So I'll turn it over to someone.
That's good stuff, Dan. If you don't mind, I'll piggyback off of that a little bit more and just say that for me, I think that I like that foreground and subconscious thing. I like that. I'm gonna have to keep that in my mind. But I think also, Dan, to your point there with the moving things around, is understanding why we have it in our mind the way we have it in our mind. A lot of times, you know, the things that you were talking about, is it because I'm worried about what somebody's going to think about me? Is it because I'm ashamed that I don't have the newest clothes, or I'm ashamed that I have a big wart on my nose, or am I worried about not being able to be as successful as so and so? I have all this doubt going on because I don't have the skill set or the knowledge, or people don't love me the way they love somebody else. Are all those things going on inside you? And a lot of times it really does come down to that doubt, the guilt, shame, and the worry that keeps a person from being able to move things to that subconscious activity, because they're so stuck in that. That's what's feeding constantly the critic inside your head, the judge inside your head, the perfectionist inside your head. The doubt, guilt, shame, and worry feeds all of that, and that keeps that negative conversation going on. So it's hard to get it to move down to subconscious. That was a really good thought process. I'm gonna have to write that down, Dan.
Yeah, for Christina, for me, I've really had to notice those thoughts, those inner speakers, and have had to jump on the opportunity to change it right away. That example of turning off the light switch, it kind of shows how putting things on autopilot can actually kind of backfire a little bit. So we got to be very careful as to what we ingrain into our the forefront of our mind, like Dan said, and but I think a lot of it comes back to belief too. We can read these self-help books and we can get really inspired and think, oh, this sounds great, this sounds real wonderful, and then we get back into our regular daily life and we wonder why we don't go directly back to the self-help book thinking. But I think some of it has to do in belief. Our belief is still stuck back into the default programming, even though everything that we read in front of us might make perfectly good sense. Our real belief, our real solid belief, lies back in that default programming, and so I think if we got to focus on that. If we can, in order to change that default programming and that autopilot thinking that isn't serving us well, I think it really helps to do what, like Sandy was saying, make sure our environment is productive for that, and so that we're not getting the external negativity, because we're probably having enough of a hard time dealing with the internal stuff, the internal confusion. That's pulling us one direction or another. So if we can, it's interesting to me how many people that I meet that are into personal development who have completely gotten rid of their televisions, and they try not to be online as much as possible, except for what they do in work. So but those are just awesome thoughts, and I think it kind of shows how all of these tips need to be brought together to reinforce each other, and help us to use it in a manner that really serves us better. So, great stuff.
Awesome. Hey, Catherine, you haven't said anything for a little bit. You want to jump out and add your thoughts? I was thinking that we would kind of read through these 3 missing ingredients that were in the last part of this chapter. Uh-oh, am I frozen? Sorry.
I think you froze up a little bit, but you're still there.
Okay. Did you want to jump out?
Well, I'm going to bring in a term that everybody's familiar with but hasn't been mentioned yet today, and that is, the internet is an amazing tool. But for a lot of people, but for somebody like me, there's so much information, and there's something that's been termed shiny balls, which I think keeps a lot of people from success, because yeah, you get all excited about one thing, or you read a really great book, and you can have shiny balls with businesses or um, with self-help books or with whatever. You can you just get distracted easily because there's such a vast amount of information. So I think especially online, focus becomes really paramount. Your ability to really learn how to focus. Bring you back to where we started with Donna, where she said, come into the now. If you're in the now, you're not really, nobody's like right here in your, hopefully nobody's right here in your face telling you you're a loser or whatever. So if you're really in the now, you can separate yourself from all of those nagging thoughts. And but the subconscious sneaks them in on you. You're right, Dan. Sometimes you're operating off of systems that you don't even recognize. So learning how to reprogram yourself, those daily habits, like Sandy and I said earlier, those daily habits, making sure to do them. I just saw a post this morning on Facebook about if if you get drugged down into some of that stuff, just start doing rote activities. Just do your dishes or vacuum, or do something that that doesn't something that is on autopilot, because when you're vacuuming or whatever, you're half of us are on autopilot when we're driving. I hate to say it, but I mean, I know I get to where I'm going and I'm like, I don't remember driving. So half of us are on autopilot even for that. But just start doing some of those autopilot things, and then kind of get yourself back on track. Just something that I think some people use food that way. They eat comfort food. I think it's termed comfort food. So you probably don't want to do a lot of that, but but just have some routines, something that you can step into, plan for those times. Just know that there's going to be times when your brain is just like going to be not wanting to shut off. It's going to be wanting to jump all over the place, and just plan for those times. Get, a certain set of activities or whatever that oh, okay, it's time to do this. And you just start doing those and kind of pull yourself back in. It's like one of those airplanes. They say they're always off course, like 99% of the time or whatever, but then they kind of pull themselves back. So that's what we have to do with ourselves too.
You want me to do that now, Samantha?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I've kind of been freezing up a little bit, but yeah, I wanted to go ahead and read through those last three, the three missing ingredients there at the end, and I think that we've covered them quite a bit, but I do want to go ahead and just address them from the author's perspective, and then we can, everybody can kind of give their final thoughts at the end, and then I'll wrap it up.
Okay. The missing ingredients. In my analysis of what worked and what did not, I found three ingredients which are clearly missing from almost all of the literature. Number one, the first missing ingredient is permanence. All external solutions are temporary. Even the best of the ideas work only for a time. Without constant attention and effort, even the most exciting success breakthroughs run their course and eventually end up on our list of good ideas and good intentions. Few, if any, offered built-in ways to keep them working. I have yet to find a book that would jump down off the shelf and tap you on the shoulder each morning and say, hey, remember me? Remember what I taught you? Why aren't you still doing it? Number two, the second ingredient missing from most of the success literature is a knowledge of the physiological processes of the human brain, based on what we now know about actual mind-brain functions. Without an understanding of the actual process by which the human brain accepts information, programming, and in turn responds, directs, and controls us, it would be difficult or impossible to create any success plan that worked and kept working indefinitely. The brain runs the ship. If you want to make a permanent change of any kind, you've got to follow the rules. If you want to make a change and make it stick, you've got to do it the way the brain works. Number three, the third missing ingredient, and the most important of all, is a new word-for-word set of directions, new programming to the subconscious mind, the control center of the brain. That means a specific programming vocabulary, which is worded in a specific way that anyone can use at any time to erase and replace the old negative programming with positive, productive new directions. The only solution which includes all of the three missing ingredients is something called self-talk. Think for a moment about some of the things you would like to accomplish or achieve in your life, or even those smaller things you would like to change about your life right now. Your objective could be to earn more income, have a better family life, improve your skills, do better in school, do better at work, anything at all. Whatever means you choose to make the change, unless you first begin to change your old programming, the years of conditioning that keeps you doing it in the old way, the likely outcome is that what you want to accomplish will not work or will not last.
Anybody want to share their final thoughts before we sign off for today?
Yeah, just I'll say my final thoughts on that one. Good. It is very true. The old way just doesn't work. No, we're not going. That's seared in our brain. But I've always heard this all my life, and I'm gonna close it with this statement here. Don't. It's not good to talk to yourself. So glad I didn't believe that, because it's good to talk to yourself. And the last thing I would say is, no, we can't change the old habits, but we can form and practice on new habits that will help. Again, that most vital part that's missing is our brain. I'll leave that with you today.
Yeah, I'll jump out. I think the problem is trying to change the external world without changing the internal world, and it's like looking in the mirror and expecting that the outside world is going to change, when really what comes back to you is a reflection of yourself. And until that internal world is changed, your external world is just going to remain the same. And let's see, I had some things written here. I had one of those great thoughts. It probably would have changed life on Earth as we now know it, but it's gone. And I think Christina had one of those earlier. So anyway, we will never know what that thought was. But anyway, you've got to change that internal world. Otherwise, it's just looking in a mirror, and the mirror's always going to reflect back to you, your natural reflection. And that takes time. It's I guess I could liken it to, I used to smoke cigarettes, and there was a time when I didn't smoke cigarettes, and that was natural and normal. And then I started smoking, and I coughed, and I sputtered, and sometimes I got dizzy and sick, but I was tough, and I hung in there, and I learned how to smoke. And then I mastered smoking, and then I was a champion at smoking, and then I decided one day I wanted to quit smoking, but my body didn't want to give up smoking, and I had to go through all this struggle and all this pain to get to the point where I no longer smoked. And then once again, being a non-smoker became natural and comfortable to me again. But it was a process, and it was difficult, and my body didn't want to give it up. And my mind wanted to hang on to it, but I had to master the art of non-smoking once again. And that's why I'm talking about changing that reflection, what reflects back to you in the mirror, and that's internal. And I don't believe you can change your external world until you change your internal world. So I'm done.
Mic drop moment for Dan. Absolutely, Dan. You have got to work on you. No matter what's going on in the external, no matter how much crap keeps coming at you from the external, it's one of those things, if you've ever noticed, it seems like stuff snowballs. Bad crap just snowballs. You get one left hook, and you get a right hook, and then you get an uppercut, and it's like, good Lord, what more? Well, the universe has a way. Just like that law of attraction, positive stuff comes your way. Well, if you stay in the muck and that negativity inside yourself, the universe has a way of really being attracted to that too. And so, yeah, you gotta change the inside stuff. I really can't top that one, Dan. You get that one this week.
Yeah, that's great. We are working on ourselves right now, right? And but so we got to stick with it, everybody, and don't give up. Don't get discouraged. Stay grateful, because our subconscious is just trying to help us out. It's got us looking out for the things that could hurt us and hinder us and all that. And we can't get frustrated with it. We need to recognize it and be grateful for it and say, hey, I understand you're trying to help me, but that's not exactly what that internal thought. If you see something, if you hear something that isn't correct, it's not correct, and it's not something you want to continue thinking. It's not serving you well. And if you don't know what you want to replace it with yet, just say, be grateful and say, hey, this isn't right. This isn't right. I'm going to replace that with something, and that's what I'm working on. But be grateful. Don't get discouraged, and just keep working at it. I love you guys. It's so great to be here and see everybody on.
We have so much, so many programs running, and it's interesting because we don't know half of them, but we really have to start becoming aware of those. We have to pay attention to those. Somebody said something about those quiet thoughts. We have to pay attention to those because they sneak in on us, and it's challenging because when so many things are on autopilot, it's hard to steer that boat back in. But having a group of friends like this, coming to masterminds like this is so, and of course we talk to each other through the week a little bit, not a whole lot, not as much as you might think, because we're all so busy. But it just really helps to have something, especially something scheduled, once a week, to kind of pull you back in. Saturdays sometimes are this is a great tool for me. It kind of pulls me back in, gets me a little bit more on focus. And the important thing, though, is to work on yourself. We come here and we all have businesses and stuff, but I'm going to tell you, I haven't been doing this all that long, but I've been doing it long enough that I've had businesses that I was involved in close their door like overnight. So I'm not saying don't work on your business, but I'm saying work on you, because the business may not be there tomorrow, so if you've got all your ducks, all your chickens in this one basket, it better be your basket, because if the business goes away, you're the one that is going to step forward into the new adventure. There's all these millionaires that have gone bankrupt like 3 or 4 times, but they rebuild it. That's because they worked on themselves, not because they worked on their business as much as they worked on themselves, because they probably found out early on too that there's not permanence in most things. The only thing that's permanent is our spirit and our soul. So work on yourself, and the rest of it will work itself out. That's all I'll say.
Is that everybody? Anybody else have any final thoughts? Okay. All right. I wanted to just kind of address a couple of things. In this, of course, at the end of this chapter, it's talking about understanding how the brain works, and you got to work with the brain in order for you to make these changes. And we've each talked about different things that can make a difference as far as our programming goes. But one of the things I think is the most important is like what Catherine, I think it was what you were saying, is becoming aware. Because if you're not aware of what's going on, then obviously you can't pinpoint those things that are an issue and then begin to work on them. But I love what you were talking about, Catherine, when you were saying, hey, somebody else want to wrap up? I got a train. Sorry.
Well, I tell you what, Samantha's got a train going by, but I don't know how long it's going to take for the train to go by. But Sandy, did you have a closing thought before we wrap up?
I'm good. Good discussion. Thanks everybody for coming, and I look forward to see y'all again next time.
Well, if I know Samantha enough, then I'm pretty sure she'll put whatever her thought process was in the event page or over on Saturday Morning Mastermind.com, so that you can take a look at it and follow up with her if you have any more questions or comments. But if nobody else has any more comments, I say let's wrap it up for the day and have a great weekend.
That's cool.
I hope everybody has a, oh, there's a lot of feedback. I hope everybody has a wonderful week. And don't forget to join us over at Saturday Morning Mastermind.com, if I can spit it out. Thank you. And that's where you'll always find our event page. You know, we do our pre-mastermind discussion where we, share some thoughts and comments in between our hangouts. And if you want to join that, instead of having a separate page, we now have that on our event page, which is really awesome. So just go to SaturdayMorningMastermind.com. That'll bring you to the event page. You'll find all our recordings. You can catch the replay, all the links. And please be sure to join our newsletter. We have like a new newsletter going out. And just sign up for that. There's a link right there on the event page. And that way you'll stay up to date on whatever we're up to. So is the train gone now, Samantha? Oh, no, I still see it. Okay, was there anything else anybody need to mention? No? Okay, then I guess we're gone. Thank you, everyone, for coming and all the wonderful comments. We really appreciate your participation. So thank you all so much. Have a blessed week.
Bye-bye.